Rule of Love, a reflection for the third Sunday of Lent. Rustled and hustled out of slavery in Egypt, on a desert journey whose end they cannot imagine, the people must now deal with the master of this caravan. They send their emissary, Moses, up the mountain to receive from the Lord their charter of freedom, God's law for them. These 10 ground rules will govern their unfolding relationship with God, soon to be called covenant. And while these commands speak directly to individuals, you shall not, they provide firm guidance for community living. This law forms the code, the basis of transformative ethical behavior meant to lead this group of escapees out from desert chaos into community. Israel being Israel, different versions of the Decalogue, the 10 words, become the fodder for ongoing discussion, with each commandment mined for its deep meaning and continually reinterpreted for new circumstances. After generations of lively argument, the Torah emerges as a lasting gift. The dream of God for God's people, the secrets of God's own heart spelled out for their benefit. From the Torah, the people learn to live in right relationship with God, with others, and with creation, and also the rituals of reflection and repair. Now fixed on the page, the 10 Commandments nonetheless speak a living word to us, the word of a loving God who seeks a loving response to the rules of relationship. How might this rule of law be interpreted as a rule of love? Psalm 19 gives us a hint. During my time in Marquette, Michigan, I trained a young cantor to sing Psalm 19. Julia was one of my most disciplined voice students, with solid breath control, accurate pitch, and excellent diction. But her voice was young, and her sensibility just beginning to develop. I chose this particular setting of Psalm 19 for its purity and clarity, a good match for Julia's voice and personality. She worked hard as always, learned the notes and the words, and sang them accurately, but something was missing. One afternoon during her lesson, we had a conversation about it. I asked her what she noticed about the words she was singing. She pointed out the repetition, sensing that she was saying almost the same thing over and over again. I provided the technical term, parallelism, and explained that this rhyming of thoughts was a common feature of Hebrew poetry. Then I asked the critical question, what does it mean to you? This brave young person smiled, shook her head, and said, I don't know. Sensing a teachable moment, I explained, when we think of law, we so often think of it negatively, as a burden or a limit on our freedom to do what we want. But for our ancestors in faith, the Hebrew people, the law was a gift, a precious guide for living in right relationship with God, one another, and creation. Julia paid attention and tried to make sense of what I said, but I could see that it brought her no closer to a personal connection with the text. So I tried a different tack. Think of the law, decrees, precepts, ordinances, as the rule of God in your life, the voice of the Spirit in your heart that guides you in the decisions that you make each day about how to act, how to treat others, how to handle your responsibilities. This psalm says that guide is good. She smiled again, this time with a bit of a nod. Just think about that, I said. Finally, we looked at the final verse of the setting that talked about the law as sweeter also than syrup or honey from the comb. I encouraged her to sing the law words as our Hebrew ancestors surely did, with imagination enough to taste that sweetness in her own mouth. Julia sang Psalm 19 at the Easter Vigil that year, and something extraordinary happened. A familiar, repetitive text came to life in a whole new way. Her childlike voice sang out in trust and delight in the rule of God. And yes, as she tasted the honey on her tongue, we all tasted it with her. Alas, by the time of Jesus, the multitude of rules, rubrics, and regulations had become a crushing burden for ordinary folk and big business for religious elites. No longer a gift, but a new kind of slavery. No wonder Jesus acted as he did, clearing the temple area of the business of sacrifice, and thereby indicting the whole system for its failure to sustain the covenant relationship between the people and God.